my big suggestion to students, particularly through high school, is
you can do anything.
Choose it for you, not for it is worth
it. Just focus on the next
Doesn't
step.
matter what you're doing.
Don't be afraid.
As long as you're doing
That
something.
is such good advice.
I don't think I could see myself doing
It's a
anything else.
challenging life.
Student nights, Wednesday to
Oh,
Saturday.
I worked on that house.
I racked up every single dollar of debt that I
I
possibly
think there's
could.
a lot of pressure on high school.
Yeah, I
kids
just
these days,
love
right?
working outside.
And if money is something that you care a lot
In
about,
hindsight,
I've also been a very indecisive
But you
person.
keep looking for roads that have been less
It
travelled.
was just that moment that I knew what I wanted to do. So nothing else is going to change that.
Welcome to the guest speaker.
Right, let's kick this off, Sam. So few little things to get you motivated and sort of remembering your childhood. So my first real memories are you dropping off my kids to school on the bus from Hautapu. So I want to shout out to Hautapu Primary School, because hopefully they'll share this. We're often encouraging the first school. So yeah, that was your responsibility to drop I don't know if it was Hunter and Noah, but it was definitely Hunter. I taught with your mum for 20 years, I think. Would have to have been me. I don't know how long mum's been in the States, but it wouldn't be 5 yet, would it?
no, not yet. It's three, almost coming on 4. Yeah.
Okay, so probably 21 years. Taught your brothers, Jack and James, and I see James just, what do we call it, graduated. So as he's finished high school. And I think I taught you every year from year 10, from memory. Getting married, and now I've got now it's 4 weeks, is it, to Hannah?
Yep. It was a month yesterday.
Oh, there you go.
It's in London.
No.
It's in London. In Marylebone Town Hall.
London.
Yep.
Cool. And my other little link, I suppose you've been through this. You've been one of these people who've turned up for guest speaker roles. I think you've probably done 3 or 4 and answered questions online for kids. And interestingly, one of those kids, I don't know whether the Trump thing puts haywire on this or not, but she was going to Harvard on a swim scholarship, and that was through a conversation I had asked some questions of you. So you've been involved in this idea that the support can come back, and that, if people reach out. So one, thank you for all of that, but also that guest speaker stuff you've been doing. And I have to raise this because I've been asked to behave, but obviously for people who have watched a few of these, you and Grace used to go out at high school, so I got to live that out, and I want to be respectful and nice. So I'm just hoping when you say you went to America, it was because of the shitty girlfriend.
Okay, I'll keep that one to myself.
It has to be the only reason to go to Harvard. So yeah, look, can we start at that beginning? Where are you now? What are you doing? Before maybe we get your recollections quickly of school. I think it will be quick, because I think people want to know about the Harvard, the going overseas. Sure. So where are you now?
So right now, I am a deployment strategist, is my title, at Palantir Technologies in London. Specifically in the commercial sector of the business. Yeah, that's a pretty, at face value, doesn't give you a lot of information about what I actually do on a day-to-day basis. I can dive into more detail now, or should I do that later?
Yeah, go. Yeah.
So Palantir Technologies is it's a tech company. We make software that enables enterprises and government entities to understand and leverage their data in the most valuable ways possible. So a deployment strategist, my specific role is a client-facing role. So I essentially take Palantir's software, which is sort of our core proposition, which is a toolbox of data analytics, transformation, analysis, automation tools. And I then sort of use those tools to make or design a bespoke product that specifically solves a specific client's problem. So in the commercial business, that can be pretty broad. That could be optimizing your supply chain. It could be identifying financial crime in financial institutions. It could be automating some reporting. It could be working on customer service. It could be identifying, lots of different things, very broad. But any instances where there's a lot of data needs to come into one place particularly where we do really well is putting AI on top of that. So we've, I think, sort of been the first or the fastest to um, identify how to leverage AI in big enterprises and in the government to generate value really quickly and efficiently. And that's sort of, I think, why we're sort of in my opinion, the market leaders at this point. But yeah, I'm the one who takes the toolbox, meets the clients, figures out the problem, how we can solve it, and then actually puts the tools together and delivers it to the client.
Okay. Wicked. So that's going to interest a lot of people. What would you say, kids? Maybe finance, marketing.
I think it's a lot of I think you definitely need a computer science background. Oh, well, a technical background. I think computer science is probably a bit too niche. But being able to understand sort of how different institutions might collect their data, what forms it lives in, and then how you would go after decompose a problem with from a data lens. So it's not just like, oh, we've got this like revenue problem, we need more revenue. Like, okay, let's make a better product or reduce costs. And there's many ways you could do that, but specifically from the lens of, okay, how can we leverage data specifically? Maybe it's identify, yeah, it's really understanding data. So it could be data analytics, applied math, engineering. I was a mechanical engineer. That was a great background. Anywhere where you're like solving problems from an analytical lens, or quantitative lens, using data, which is, yeah, engineering, CS, applied math, economics also yeah, it can be very broad. I think the big core skill set, particularly for my role, that's valuable is the ability to go and find a problem. Our clients will give us a problem, and being able to break that down and identify, okay, what is the best way to solve this problem? One thing we find actually is that like a client might say, hey, we've got this profit problem. And they go, we need to increase revenue to fix this profit problem. And then you might go in and investigate all the different elements of the problem, and actually, no, you don't have a revenue problem, you have a cost problem. And so we then go and solve the cost problem. So the ability to drill down and actually find the pieces that matter, and it could be easily solved using data, is probably the biggest, most important skill set that's needed for this role.
Okay, so now people have got this feel of you and what you do probably daily. I'm even getting thoughts of what that looks like. Take us right back to, let's just start, I mentioned how to do primary, but maybe high school. What were you dabbling in there? What were your sort of subject specialist stuff? And then I suppose and then, go there first. Yeah.
Sure. So I think actually in high school, I always wanted to be like a doctor actually. I remember through my formative years of high school, year 9, 10, 11, I was like, no, I want to go to Otago, I want to become a doctor. I think the motivation was what appeared to be like quite an like intelligent job to have. Like you got to be smart to do that. It's seen as very I don't know, like clever and impressive, and it's good for the community, right? Like, great, that sounds good. I think I'm reasonably clever at the time. I think let's do that. And so that drove me to do a lot of math and science, which I think was sort of what I was best at, in particular math. I was reasonably good at math. It was always like sort of a means to an end, though. I didn't love math. I quite like physics, actually, was probably one of my favorite subjects. And of course, geography. I was not bad at geography as well, but that was I did that class because it was fun more than anything. I think, to be honest, it wasn't going to help me become a doctor so much, but you got to have those. And so that sort of drove me year 9 to 11. Just the path is really clear. I think you got to have your sciences down, have your math down to get into uni to become a doctor. So that was really what drove my subject selection, as well as like there were a few other fun ones you get to pick, right? Like I did sports science because I was pretty into sports at the time. Well, always have been, still am. And then geography as well, I think, because I was good at it as well. I think was part of it. That's a lot of it too. But yeah,
And I
that was
think it
sort
would
of
be fair to jump in, Sam, and go. I mean, you were probably the ultimate all-rounder. And in fact, I think you won that year 13, which you think, Grace, you got the girls one, Sam, you got the boys one, best all-rounder.
yeah.
Because you were, let's get into that too. You were, first 15, you were Marty silver medalist, were you?
Yeah, never gonna silver medalist. Yeah.
Yeah, you were, yeah. So you were knocking on the doors of the doctor there and getting endorsements, very clever, very sporting, the world's your oyster. Can I ask then, with that sort of experience at school, which sounds pretty good, it worked for you. You mentioned doctor, but when did you start thinking about this American thing, and how did that go for you, and how did you go about it?
So I remember actually it was I think it was year 12. We were just coming out of the summer. We're having a bunch of regattas. I never really even thought about it as an option when it sprung upon me. But I was reached out to by Brown University, was the first actually I remember, which is an Ivy League in, Rhode Island. And they sent me a message. I think it was on like Facebook actually, and they said, "Hey, saw you performing pretty well at the national level in the single. We'd be interested in discussing you potentially studying at Brown." And I hadn't even really heard about it, to be honest. It was not like it was uncommon at the time, but no one had really. I don't know, maybe my coaches were hiding it from me at the time. Everyone wanted New Zealand rowers to stay in New Zealand, which has changed since. But yeah, I thought it was like spam at first. I don't know why, but I sort of got a couple other messages from different universities. And then I got a letter. Actually, Harvard sent a letter to school, to Cambridge High School, and it got like taken to me in class, which was pretty cool. And I think it was once I sort of started going through the process, started talking to these recruiters, it became pretty clear that this was a real option, and that they really wasn't just some like, maybe like you could come here, but it was like, oh, actually, this would be a really cool fit. And then I think I initially sort of had these conversations about, okay, what if I wanted to study medicine in America? And how they do it in the States is a little bit different. They do the undergrad degree for 4 years, which is like on a pre-med track. It's not. It could be a variety of different degrees. It could be like biology, chemistry, stuff like that. But you just have to tick off certain boxes in order to then go into postgrad, which would be medical school. Very long process, quite different to how New Zealand does it. And then really I can only row for 4 years. Part of the like collegiate program is that you have 4 years, I think. So 4 or 5, 4 years, I can't remember, but of eligibility. So it became clear to me I could go to the States and row, but it would be a lot more of my time to study medicine over there as well. And so I think my passion or drive to become a doctor did not overcome the opportunity to go and study at Harvard. I sort of had this backup option of doing engineering, because it's again a reasonably good application of sort of math and science, which I enjoyed and was reasonably good at. And so I ended up going, okay, you can't do medicine. Do you have engineering degrees? They said, yes, we do, and you can do that in 4 years. So great. Toss the doctor thing out the window, pick up the engineering thing. But honestly, at the time, it was more getting a degree from Ivy League University was more important to me really than the degree itself, like what the degree was. Mechanical engineering at the time just made the most sense to pick up as a substitute for trying to be a doctor. Yeah.
You had quite a quandary with the New Zealand rowing. I remember having quite long chats with you. I saw you practicing SATs because it still wasn't guaranteed and you had to sit stuff. So it wasn't just that letters arose. there were other decisions. And to be fair, you had a girlfriend, like, because I want kids to understand, like I had one when I went to Wellington, the whole, you're in relationships, but you had a New Zealand rowing future, maybe. It wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't easy. No, at the time, rowing New Zealand was pretty much that. So there were more and more um, New Zealand rowers at the time starting to move over to the States, and New Zealand rowing at the time wasn't responding particularly positively to that. They were going along the lines of, okay, while you row in America, you can't row for New Zealand teams. And so at the time, it was a decision between, okay, do I want to row for New Zealand in the next 4 years while I'm at university? Or is it more important to get this Harvard degree and then potentially come back to keep rowing if I still want to do that? So I was always sort of leaning towards, like, I loved rowing. I thought I was pretty good at it, but I knew that I wouldn't be a rower forever. And so I wanted to make sure that whatever option I chose sort of set up that future. And so I was always sort of leaning towards going to the States. Because I was young, I was like 17. Well, I was 17 when I actually moved over to the States, which is, particularly in a rower's career, is like, if I graduated at 21, 22, like that's pretty young for a rower still, even still. So it's not like I was hamstringing my rowing career by going to this university. But more was the rhetoric that from rowing New Zealand, that they were just going to like toss me out and never see me again, or have anything to do with me. But I actually had what really helped me decide, I actually had a conversation with Hamish Bond for about an hour, actually. Really generous of him to chat with me for that long. I don't even know, I can't even remember how I got his number. But I remember him chatting to me, and he actually said, look, if I was in your position, I would have gone. Like, I would go. He said, if you are genuinely the fastest and the best, you're going to make the boat go the fastest, they're not going to say, nah, you're not rowing. Like, if you come back and you will make the boat win a medal, they're not going to say, nah, get stuffed. They're going to include you in the boat. So I was like, yeah, okay, good point, Hamish Bond. You probably know what you're talking about. I'll listen to you. And so that was really the big decision, the thing that helped me with the decision the most. But to your point on sort of some of the other things I had to do, SAT, particularly for the Ivy League schools, you do need to meet an academic requirement. And so I studied a lot for the SATs. I use your class as a way to do that. I think I've probably 3 or 4 months. Instead of, I would just sit in the back on the computers doing SAT practice tests, and I had to get a minimum score essentially to be able to get in, and so that was a lot of work as well. And I was doing that at the time where I hadn't really made my decision yet, but I wanted to make sure I was prepared in the case that I did want to go, and I ended up going. So yeah, that was the American universities don't really have any idea about NCEA, like level 1, 2, or 3 or whatever. So they sort of see, oh, you got excellence endorsement, great, sure. Sydney SAT, that means nothing to us. That's how it sort of goes.
That has changed at the moment. They're asking teachers, because this could be important for some kids listening or parents. Okay. They want teachers to sign off, like if you got an excellence in geography, was it a high, a medium, low? So they're almost after us to regrade NCEA. So
interesting. Okay.
Did a mass assessment, but was it a low excellence? Which is a really weird. If they understood NCEA, I don't think they'd ask that, because it's a criteria based.
Yeah.
So I don't think the teams in fact are used.
Also, though, Sam, if I remember, because Ludlam, he was already doing like New Zealand team at that point. So I know you like brushed a little bit on that decision of staying with New Zealand or going. But Lucas, did you already know him? Like, I'm just kind of interested in that process of, was there other Kiwis going over with you?
Yeah.
How did that like ease you? Because although people might not necessarily relate to your rowing, they might have something else that's pulling them in a different direction. And like, just how having someone else go through the process helped you in that.
Yeah. So Lucas, he was on the New Zealand team with me the first time. One of my best mates to this day. He also went to Harvard with me. Um, yeah, we sort of became close. We ended up going to Harvard independently. We didn't decide to go. We weren't close when the decision was made. We became close after going to university. But to your point, Grace, it was very commonly talked about in like the New Zealand junior rowing camp. Like people, I think there were a couple of people who were on the team who were openly had already committed to going to American universities. So there were lots of discussions about, oh, what was the process like? Why'd you make that decision? And so I think that made it a lot less, the conversations, at least within our peer group, was a lot less taboo than maybe it was made to seem by Rowing New Zealand. So that made it a lot easier that I had the ability to talk to these people who had gone through the process or were going through the process to help steer my decisions. Um, yeah, that made it a lot easier. I ended up actually going to sit like the SATs with Lucas. We just like buddied up because we were going through like the same timelines as each other because we both wanted to go to Harvard. But um, yeah, people were going to different universities to study different things, different processes. Even some of the universities themselves have slightly different processes as well. So I was very fortunate that at that time, people within the junior rowing camp were pretty open to talking about it. So that really helped give me confidence that this was like there are other people doing it, so surely it's a good idea. And how do I go about this in the best way possible and make the decision around which university I want to go to? Yeah, having that network, to your point, Grace, was really valuable.
When you said the thing about the Facebook message, because there are people listening who probably would have all expected that Harvard letter, which is sick, that probably helped create some of the prestige. But I recall too, it literally was Facebook messages. I don't know if it's changed since then. So for those people who aren't as familiar, how did that go from Brown sending your Facebook message to then did you Skype? Did you visit? Like to you and I, that makes a bit of sense, but to the lay person, that seems like a bit of a stretch. Yeah. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, totally. I think it starts with like a message or an email or a letter, and then it's like an introductory Zoom call. They sort of just talk about. I mean, I was just like a 16-year-old kid at the time. Like, I don't know what to talk to these coaches about really, but it's like, oh, what's your program like? How's the team going? What's the sort of team culture like? What's the university setup like? And then I'll ask you like, how are you going? How's your season going? What sort of scores are you doing? It's very much like, okay, what's sort of the vibe of the university, the team? Is it going to be a good fit? And also, are you like performing well? Am I a person that's going to fit in well with the team's culture? And eventually, if you sort of identify, oh, this could be a good fit, but what followed was in official visits, was what they call. So they fly you over to spend like a weekend with the team, see the university, go to some classes, sit in on the trainings, and sort of catch the vibe, is a good way to put it. And then, yeah, so I did that for two universities. I had it drilled down to was Harvard and Brown. And I was actually leaning more towards Brown when I went over, but after going to see the two campuses and the teams and how they trained, and what the classes were like, it became pretty clear to me that the Harvard was the right choice. And then you say, I told the recruiting coach, I said, hey, I want to commit, let's do this. And then I had to fill out a bunch of forms, apply formally through the university, have an interview with the university, and then they extended an offer. So that's sort of how the process went. I think the official visit was the kicker.
Sam, can I ask, because there's some parents sitting here now sweating because they have a talented kid, because I know mum and dad, what's the cost scenario? Because money, what are we talking?
To go on the visits or the university itself?
No, to pay to going to uni. I mean, we're not talking going down to Vic. We're now, yeah.
I think it depends on the university. So Ivy Leagues generally do what's called financial aid, which is a means-based scholarship. So they So mum and dad had to report their income. Here's how much we earn. Here's our assets. And then Harvard calculates, okay, here's how much we think you're able to reasonably afford for the tuition. And then Harvard will pay the difference. Um, so, but like obviously lots of Harvard students are fairly well off, and so they will end up, and that's financial aid is that's for every student. So that's not an athletic scholarship. There's no unique specific athletic scholarships in the Ivy League. So every student will get financial aid. So if you have a single mum who's earning sort of the average income, likely you'll get a full ride and maybe even like a stipend. So they try to be pretty good about it and make it reasonably affordable. The other schools, Grace would probably be able to talk about this better than I can actually, about sort of the athletic scholarships that are available. I think it really depends on the sport and the university how much they can afford to pay. I know Title IX for women's sports makes it pretty favourable for a lot of female athletes going over um, to those big schools. But yeah, I think it really depends on the level of athlete they are. You might get like partial scholarships, but I think without any scholarships, broadly speaking, if you just wanted to pay your way as an international student at US university is very, very expensive.
Crazy.
Very, very expensive.
Like on Title IX, Ludlam, I love Title IX because in brief, it's essentially whatever you pay your male athletes has to be equaled in female. And there's not, well, things are changing with like name, image, and likeness. But basically, if you're a female, like when I was having these conversations, it was probably quite different to Sam's because I was going state school where they do give sports like athletic scholarship. And so that's part of the conversation is how much can you give me? Essentially, can you pay for tuition? Can I get full ride? And that's quite nerve-wracking. Like I was a few years older than Sam when he was doing it, but you really have to advocate for yourself because it's a lot of money we're talking about. But Title IX, if you're a female looking to go over, you want to look for schools that have big football and basketball teams because they have money to spend and the tuition fees for an international female are significantly higher. So that was a good like tool that I was using, but just shows that the disparity in the range of kind of options there are with the US path. But I feel like too, what's good to point out here, Sam, is like these were already examples of what you even do now. Like with Palantir, you mentioned, and I know we can't get like into nitty gritty on some things, but it is bespoke. If you were, and this sounds bad, but if you were just a bit of a super tech guy who only knew the technical things, it'd be really hard to communicate with your clients and get them to open up and actually have discussions. And yes, there's data, but there's also building that trust. And I feel like already when you started this US process, you were pretty like social. You need to be able to talk to people, come across like you care, all those sorts of attributes. So I guess how did that and then Harvard, because I imagine that was quite a level up, work on those social skills as well as the technical?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a great point, Grace. Being one of the things they like test you for is, are you going to be a good teammate, right? When you're I was a single scholar for the most part in my high school career, so sort of was just doing my thing by myself, which you would think would make me a bad teammate. But I guess I also played rugby since I was 5, so that helped as well. Yeah, I think it's probably one of my probably strongest skills now, actually, is the ability to like relate to people, understand their problems, be empathetic. And I think that's a lot of that was built through sport and being like a leader on some teams I'm on. But also a lot of it I learned at university through like some of the great conversations that were facilitated in the classroom. I know in the pre-read you said, well, what sort of advice can you give to students going through university or even before that? Is I think be confident or push yourself to engage in these sort of discussions, I think, and then to listen as well. I think one of the most valuable things I do on my day-to-day is listen to the client and understand what their problem is from their perspective. I might have biases towards how I think a problem should be solved, or that they're thinking about this the wrong way, but like that ability to engage and feel trusted. I think you said trust, Grace. I think that's also a huge one, is for the enabling or driving the client, or not a client, your teammates, your coach, to trust you is like hugely important. And I think that's done through open conversation listening. And that's something that takes time. You don't just like, as a 16-year-old kid, like, I don't know, I remember trying to talk to my little brother James. He's just turned 18, but he went through sort of 15, 16, 17. And I was like, this kid is like pretty rough to talk to right now, this angsty teen. So it's not something you just like have. It's grown through engaging with conversations, understanding people's perspectives, being empathetic. So my big suggestion to students, particularly through high school and going to university, is don't be afraid to engage in these discussions, and to form your own opinions and to be empathetic. Because I think that's like a huge part of my job. It's a huge part of my role as a leader on the Harvard rowing team. As a and as a rower itself, enabling the coaches to teach me because they trust that I will listen. So yeah, that's my spiel about one of the core things I would recommend to students, I guess.
Can I ask both of you, while I've got the opportunity, I think I'll also just make a statement. You're also a kind kid. So there's a level of kindness and respect. I think if you haven't got that, it's a difficult road ahead. But anyway, other sports, I mean, I've noticed since I've had numerous kids go to America. Obviously, Grace went. What other sports, if I'm sitting here and I'm a parent, that you knew of, Kiwis are over there making it? And though, what level did they have to be at? Like, I've got a number of lacrosse people, a swimmer. What other sports, and do you have to be a national champ? Talk to me about that.
I think rowing's a good one, honestly. Rowing is probably one of the best ones for New Zealand students to do to try and get into the good schools in the US. I think rowing is uniquely dominated by the Ivy Leagues, so you always automatically like get pointed in the direction of the pretty high level institutions, I think, particularly for the men as well. Title IX has made it a bit more spread out for the women, I think, as Grace was mentioned earlier. But some of the other good ones are swimming. I see a lot of New Zealand swimmers doing reasonably well. I think you need to be a pretty good swimmer though to get recruited. Field hockey is another one. So I knew quite a few girls from New Zealand on the field hockey team. I don't think you need to be like a national rep to go over for field hockey. I'm trying to think what else. I think lacrosse, football. Yep. There was some footballers. Again, I don't think you quite need to be national level for football, but still obviously pretty handy. I think lacrosse is a tough one. Any of the sports where America tends to dominate, I think, and New Zealand maybe doesn't. So like lacrosse, I think can be slightly more challenging to get to the good schools for that, because the US universities tend to look internally for the good athletes there. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, athletics. So track and field is a good one. We have some good New Zealanders doing
we've got some
well.
high jumpers, Form 2 twins doing really, really well. So
yeah, so athletics is a big one they recruit for.
Volleyball too. I've met a couple of volleyball.
Oh yeah.
Some kickers, like American football kickers. I think New Zealand's reputation really precedes us, which is why, in particular for rowing, you just say I'm from New Zealand, and that tends to help elevate the conversation. But I think also with American football, now that it's become an Olympic sport, the US is pumping a lot more money into that and looking towards like rugby players or cross skills, at least for the short term. So that could be one that maybe people capitalize on. But definitely like your swimming, your lacrosse, they're already so dominant in that sport that you'd have to be pretty exceptional. Whereas your point about being a national champ, like I'm a good example of I was good, but I wasn't great, and I knew the difference. So I was lucky to get into a school that at the time wasn't quite top ranking, and I could identify that, and I could try to use some charm to get in, and then they ended up becoming quite good. Similar to Sam, maybe once I turned up, who knows? Causation or correlation, we'll never know. But there are definitely other attributes when you're looking to schools, and if you're not amazing, you don't have to go like Division 1 or Ivy. There is Division 2, Division 3, but then those conversations around funds have to be a lot more at the forefront because they just have less money to spend.
And I have seen students push it, and I've got one in particular, I won't name her, but I'm hoping to get her on one, and had a real tough time, went high and sat on a bench for 4 years, even though she was a national level for us, and real horrific sort of mums and dads of the other players were paying into the system, and it became quite apparent but that was a particular sport, so it can be rough.
Well, also too, I think what's worth pointing out is like, especially with Sam's story, it sounds pretty like wicked because it is, but also having been there, and so were you, Ludlam, like he wasn't exactly given a silver platter to succeed. Like he worked hard and it wasn't always winning all the time. It's easy, Sam, to look at the story and be like, great, he was in juniors, he went to Harvard, and now he's working in Palantir in London. But there was those moments which I think, as you said, you're a nice guy, helped bolster the empathy, because you do maybe miss out on a trial, or COVID happens in the middle of your college experience and you have to come back. Like it can look very much just like an upward trajectory, but a lot of that empathy and stuff that you probably get to use now. So I want students who are in that year 11, 12, 13, whatever, listening, if you're not a national champion or if you're not necessarily excelling right now, you don't have to be, and you can still have a pretty cool path and career. So just wanted to point that out, Sam, as you put in the mahi, especially when things were down. And I think that's important. It's how you respond when things aren't going your way.
So, yeah, awesome. I reckon. Yeah, no, awesome. Good point. So, Sam, your degree, and let's face it, someone's going to kill us unless you talk Ivy League. That whole experience. I walk into Harvard, I buy the jersey and the hat. I go to parties. So there's a bit of, can you just give us the feeling of Harvard and then the mundane of the degree, maybe?
It's a pretty cool place. I think one of the things Harvard prides itself on, and I think I really appreciated about it, was the diversity of the students. People come from all different parts of the world, different socio-economic backgrounds, different cultures. And they're all very hardworking, very, very clever. I think that the biggest thing, particularly about just my non-athlete classmates, is that they really want to do well. They really work hard. They put the hours in. And I think that was quite inspiring. I think I chose to do engineering. And I think, I was bottom of the class pretty consistently, which is fine. I got my degree. But now people are just really, really clever. I think the diversity in the people you sort of meet and the things they share, and the ways they work is really inspiring. And I think it really opened up sort of the ceiling that I thought I had above me. I thought, I'll do an engineering, I'll get a cool engineering job, I'll earn decent money, maybe make some cool products. But there's kids there who are I want to make my own business. I am making my own business right now, or I want to become a PhD in physics or something, or I want to design I don't know, nuclear fusion or something like that. And it's, or I want to be the aspirations that these students have is insane. And I think I sort of had limited myself to a pretty, not limited, but assumed that I'd say, okay, I'll get this cool Harvard degree, it'll probably help me out a lot, probably can get a pretty cool job, we'll work hard. But I think as soon as I saw the potential that there is out there and the aspirations that these people have, that sort of really opened my eyes as to what I could do and what people can do generally. And And I think
So
that was
what opportunities came from that, Sam?
so. I think like I really like. I mean, there were lots of different opportunities. I think I could have. What a lot of people, particularly at Harvard, actually aspire. So I think there's sort of two camps. There's people who aspire to make a lot of money, and there's people who aspire to like solve really cool problems. I think I initially fell into the former, but I think I've actually transitioned to the latter more recently. But just the sort of like the companies that like I could like try work for. Like or like the companies I would be applying to. I was competing with Harvard students, as I said. I was like pretty low in my class in engineering, so I missed out on some of those. But I think like for a while I thought about, oh, should I go to Oxford or Cambridge and like do the boat race and do like a master's there? Like that sort of was sort of my mindset instead of going from like I'll just get a mechanical engineering degree and get a nice job. And now it's like I've now work at Palantir Technologies, which is I think one of the like leading tech companies in the world, in my opinion. Um, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity or even aspired to work at a company like this unless I'd had those peers around me who are also aspiring to that level, I think, and knowing it was possible. Yeah.
Did you work in America first, and then how did this job come about?
So I moved to London straight after I graduated. Um, Even getting a like visa as a student in the US is like somewhat difficult. I would have had to work in mechanical engineering to get the full length of my visa for 3 years. At that point, I decided I actually didn't want to be a mechanical engineer. So I was trying to apply for other roles, and there was visa issues. I actually had a role lined up in New York, um, for when I graduated, but it fell through because of the visa stuff. They couldn't bring me on, so I decided to go to London because as a New Zealander, it's a super easy place to get a visa. Um, and then went to a data consulting company. So doing something similar to what I do now, but with like the much more basic solutions with companies that data infrastructure is much more immature. Um, I did that for about a year and a half, and then I actually caught up with um, a friend of mine who was in the same social club, fraternity, whatever. Not fraternity, but that's the kind of vibe. In London, and he works for Palantir. And he told me about the company. I said, "Man, this sounds like you're doing some pretty cool stuff. Do you want to help me get a job there?" And he's like, "Sure thing, man. I got you." So he's the one who got me in the door. Got me that first interview, and I think like 6 or 7 interviews later. Yeah, it was a big process. Yeah, big process. Yeah, I got offered the job. So if I hadn't had that connection from university, then I wouldn't probably not even got a look in.
Do you reckon too, Sam? Like one thing I noticed because I went US after like some New Zealand experience is the alumni network. I think is a lot stronger in the US. Where to your point, like if someone's been in that same cohort or like we have frats, but you don't have frats, well, in that sort of group, they really do vouch for each other, which is something I would love to see maybe honestly more in New Zealand because that's the only way I got my jobs was actually it was an old rower, so Mark, who was like, oh, if you can do it, row hard for 10 minutes, you can do anything. And I said, shit, Mark, a 2K takes you 10 minutes, which he loved. I was like, wow, that's slow. But from there, and that was how I got supported through like that visa journey. But really is something that if you're not going to the States, leverage the people around you and not like leverage in like a icky finance bro way, but actually like nurture and kind of respect those relationships because I'm sure when Sam was talking to that guy back in Harvard, he wasn't thinking about, oh, maybe in a few years you can get me a job in Palantir. But that is kind of something to keep in mind too.
Yeah, I think the US universities in particular have really strong alumni networks. People are very proud of where they went to university, and really associate themselves with their university even after they've graduated. And so the willingness to sort of go back and help the current students is really high. And I think that's sort of what you're trying to achieve here at Grace, and Luddles, like creating this network of people that will go back and help, which I think, I mean, I didn't go to university in New Zealand, but I think is not really as much of a thing as it is in compared to the States. And I think one of the most important things that Harvard gave me was the alumni network. And I think your New Zealand can try harder or work do a better job of creating those networks, and being proud of where you went to university, and to then give back, and to help the students, the current students. I think that's really important. And I think, yeah, props to you guys for getting that together, because I think it's amazing and incredibly valuable.
Do you feel a responsibility, Sam, even though you went to uni there? Because, I mean, I'm sort of feeling like you are, because every time I've ever asked for help, you're like, yeah, what do you need? Do you feel that connection back home? I say home because it still is, I'm presuming, in your mind.
Absolutely.
Young kids and yeah, as being like a mentor and for people to reach out. And if you can help, you would.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I do feel it as a responsibility. I think if I have, I know I've never thought about it incredibly deeply, to be honest, but I have the ability to help someone along their journey, or help them make a decision, or inspire them, motivate them, or broaden their aspirations. I think, why not? It's less of a responsibility, more that I have the privilege to do that. And yeah, why not support students, help them go on the journey? Like I've had an amazing journey. It's had its ups and downs, but obviously I'm very, very happy and pleased with where I am now, and had a fantastic time. And if I can help steer students along their own journey, that they're going to have a similar reaction to their experience, and it's a privilege to do so, and I should do that.
Go from like that very sweet, wholesome stuff. Thank you, Sam. Now I'm thinking too, and we did this with Liam, who's like a medicine man, I guess. Anyway, he's going to be a doctor, but he was talking about, like, if you want to make money, this is probably not the pursuit for you. Like, there's quicker, easier ways to make it. So I'm again thinking about that student, the difference, like you were talking about rowing a lot and the IB and the prestige and the ambition. There are kids who are like, yo, I want O week and I want to party and I want to do these things. I'll say something and then I'm curious your thoughts. If you are going to go to the States, the drinking age is 21. And this seems like such like a surface level thought, but it is important, because if you're after that party scene, I mean, I went state school, that party scene was pretty relevant, informative, but very distracting. What was that fun side like in terms of first, second, third, like going to Harvard, if someone is prioritizing that?
I think if the big thing you want to get out of university is fun, I had a lot of fun. I had went to my fair share of parties, and not to incriminate myself, but drank out of red Solo cups on the occasion. But no, I think the rowing team was sort of my social network, the sort of group of people that I had the most fun with. I think no one's going to stop under 21-year-olds drinking at college, right? They might try their best, but there's no way. But I think I had to time my fun, I guess, a lot. Like I couldn't go out during the week because of rowing. I mean, I could, but I'm putting the team at risk. I'm letting my teammates down in doing so. So I would not do that. But yeah, you very much had to time your fun, and you can still enjoy yourself, and no one's going to stop you. Yeah, finding a case. Maybe you have an older friend. I don't know. Depends. But yeah, I think there's definitely lots of fun to be had. I think probably, as Grace said, the state schools are a little bit better for that. But if you're making a decision to go to like an Ivy League, probably one of the big levers is not going to be how much you can party, I think.
That's just important to bring up because we're speaking to a variety of people here.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. If you really want to party, then do your research. Go to, I don't know what, Texas A&M or something like that. You'll probably have a great time.
Like the cold, do not go to the northeast because brace yourself for the winter. Holy moly. That's something we brush over. But if you like the warmth, go to Florida, go to Cal.
Oh, yeah.
My advice for people is how much can you handle the cold? Because then the northeast is not for you.
Yeah. If you like the warmth and partying, Florida's a great place to be.
Can I ask Sam, whether you'll tell me or not, I don't know, but I have to ask, what sort of income are you on and how does that equate to your cost of living being in London? Because there's some people maybe just interested in London as a career location. And you might say to me, I'm on 400K, but it costs 200K. Like, yeah, I'm exaggerating, but would you give us some ballparks and maybe even where your ceiling gets to? Like,
Sure. Yeah, so I actually think London generally is actually quite a difficult place to earn a good income and like, especially if you're a New Zealander moving over, getting a good income and having a lot of disposable income. I'm very fortunate. I work for like an American company, so I'm on like the equivalent of an American salary. I'm on like around £80,000 a year, which is, as far as London goes, pretty good. Like pretty good. My, yeah, like I can afford to live in a nice flat. I can go out to eat once a week. Haven't been recently. I've been trying to pay for a wedding. That's been absolutely soul sucking. All disposable income goes to that. But I think, yeah, I'm very fortunate that I work for an American company and can get sort of paid a lot more like an American salary. But as a New Zealander moving over, like particularly after university, like when I actually, this is a good example. When I first moved over and was an intern at J-Man Group, I was on £500 a week. And that was like, I was like, had to, was in a big flat sharing with a bunch of people, had to be very, very careful about what I was spending my money on, was getting cheap food, going to cheap pubs, could go to like maybe, couldn't eat out. And so, yeah, new grads over there around like 30 to 40,000 pounds is probably the standard. And that's actually kind of, in my opinion, like you need to be, unless you're a New Zealander going over with a bunch of savings, that's actually quite hard to live month to month on. I think if you want to earn, I mean, there's lots of job opportunities in London. That's like one of the primary reasons why I decided London as well, because there's way more jobs, way more cool opportunities than like London, for example. But I think Australia pays way better. Like Sydney, if you're looking to, if money's really important and you're a clever New Zealander, I think Australia is a really good option, particularly Sydney. But if you're a New Zealander who has a bunch of savings, doesn't really mind burning through them to do some travel or to experience like Europe, then London, I think, is more of a place to go. Like I see a lot of my peers coming over, spending a lot of their savings, doing a lot of traveling, having a great time. But probably 20 years ago, New Zealanders maybe would tend to stay on longer. But I think people are more so, oh, I had my fun. Actually, it's kind of hard living in the UK on the average salary that they give. So maybe I'll go home.
okay, before we sort of start running out of time, is there, just on that note, in your future, what is your future? Do you have a bit of a plan in mind? And does it involve home? Does it involve more overseas stuff? Where do you think your future is?
I think I'll probably try to stint in the US. From a career perspective, Palantir is going absolutely insane in the US. We've got so much work, so many cool projects to work on. I'd get a lot more responsibility. So I think from a I'd also be closer to my family who live in Colorado. And so I think a stint in the US for a few years is where I'm sort of looking to next. Um, but I think ultimately back to New Zealand is where I want to be. Yes, it's the greatest country in the world, absolutely, without a doubt. It's fantastic. I just think I've still got an adventure to go on first before I head home. I think being around family is really important to me. Um, Hannah's family's still in Cambridge. My family will probably move home as well at some point once James is finished with university. And so yeah, once I've got a bit of an experience under my belt, I think I'd love to get back to New Zealand and do my own thing, potentially start my own company maybe.
Grace sort of signed you off, and I do remember getting stickers from Grace from Rutgers University, and I don't remember getting anything from Harvard, like a jersey or a hat, but probably got lost in the mail.
I probably did. Yeah, I sent a few over, but might have got stolen on the way.
Hey, so yeah, look, I just want to thank you, Sam, because like I say, I've heard some of your story, not all of it, in class, and I've seen those kids look up. Obviously, even sometimes it shouldn't be this way, but the word Harvard gains some respect, and sometimes kids sit up just for that. But I think once they hear you talk and once they see what sort of person you are, I think that's the more valuable thing. And I know your mum and dad would be more proud of the person you are than the degree you got. And that probably speaks volumes to them. So I want to make sure you send your love to your mum and dad and your two brothers.
Absolutely. And to your family too.
Yes. Thank you very much. So yeah, thanks for your time and the support you've given in the past and in the future for kids. And all the best for your wedding.
Thank you so much. Yeah, not long now. Geez.
No. Grace has got some questions, I think.
Just the last one, 'cause super conscious of your time too. You touched upon it, but like, if you could go back, not to generic year 12 or 13s, but just to you, piece of advice.
Buy Bitcoin? No, seriously. I don't know. I'm actually, I've been thinking about this more and more recently. I'm actually a firm believer in that, like, life has like a path for you that becomes clear over time. Um, I think maybe don't study mechanical engineering, do applied math or something like that instead would be actually, that's going to be more valuable. You're going to find that more interesting. That's a very like actionable point, but I actually think I wouldn't want to change too much or give young Sam too much advice, to be honest. I think over life, I've felt like I've had these really tough decisions that I need to make. Do I stay in New Zealand? Do I go to Harvard? Do I try to stay in the US? Do I go to London? Do I take the year off for COVID? Do I not? And I think initially when these decisions are presented to me, they seem really hard and I don't know how I'm going to make them. But over time, actually, on reflection, the decisions are actually not that hard. If I lean into, there's a cool opportunity, it's kind of scary, it's going to push me outside of my comfort zone, I should probably, like, actually, that's what I want to do. That's the decision I want to take, or the decision I want to make. And so I think, yeah, don't give too much advice to young Sam. Let him go on his journey. The decisions will become clear, and he'll have a fantastic time, I think.
Awesome, Sam. Really appreciate your time, mate.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Always great to catch up. Love sharing my story. Happy to, I don't know if you have students reach out, or I don't know how you guys are distributing this, but again,
Yeah.
happy to chat, share my story. I'm closer to 30 than I am 20 now, so starting to share wisdom that I've gained over time.
Nice.
Happy to do that as well.
Yes.
Wicked. Okay, and I'm sure Hannah will look lovely and make you look even more handsome on the day.
Oh, fingers crossed.